The Valorant Champions Tour Stage 3 is well underway across the world, and teams are working overtime on new plays and strats so that they can make their way to Berlin. For some, it's business as usual, with compositions centered around comfort picks. But my favorite teams to watch are always the innovators, and with KO added to the agent pool, Split in particular has become a very interesting map to watch. Welcome back everyone to another Valorant analysis video. Sorry that it's been a minute. I've had an interesting last few months, but I finally found something I want to talk about again, so let's just hop right into it. Now, Split as a map has had an odd history. For the introductory phase of Valorant, it was widely regarded as the least popular map due to how difficult it is to play without the utmost coordination. The narrow corridors and choke points create a lot of opportunities for catastrophic mistakes, especially in uncoordinated ranked games. Thankfully, at the pro level, the best teams have had Split figured out for a while now, and there are enough teams that are comfortable on it these days to where it at least sees a decent amount of play. But it's one thing to survive Split, and another to thrive on it. To be able to navigate the narrow architecture of Split when playing other professional teams is a feat, to be sure, but being able to abuse the rigorous choke points and bend the other team to your will, that is what makes a team truly scary. Now, there are two teams that I've personally seen demonstrate true mastery over Split recently. Verturoso from North America and Team Liquid from Europe. Now, TL shouldn't be too much of a surprise for most, as they were one of the EU representatives in Iceland, but I, for one, was pleasantly surprised when I was watching Verturoso play one day and noticed how absurdly powerful their strats on Split were. And what's really fun is that these two teams find completely opposite ways of taking advantage of Split as a map. Now, I've mentioned it a few times already, but let's make sure as we break down these two styles that we focus on how they interact with choke points, because that is where Split differentiates from every other map. Yes, other maps have choke points too, but Splits are the most punishing, especially for an attacking team. Let's start with Verturoso. Their composition is a defense-centric style that proactively denies the use of the choke points to an attacking team. Astra is omnipresent and versatile. Her stars are easily set up on the chokes and have two different threats, either denying vision and forcing the attacking team to use utility to try and exit the choke, or threatening to concuss or trap the attackers at that choke, which would result in a huge amount of punishment. Viper, with both the poison orb and the toxic screen, also has a great deal of vision denial, and can use the snake bites to keep attackers from pushing through a choke. Sage, with the barrier orb and slow orbs, can also stop attackers from pushing out chokes or even trap them there. Killjoy with her nano swarms can also stop attackers from exiting chokes, or, at the very least, get information on the attackers at those choke points via the alarm bot in the turret. You should be beginning to see a pattern here. KO probably has the hardest time of stopping attacking teams on his own, as he only has the one piece of utility that directly denies them with the fragment. However, his flash drives, if timed properly, can still at least slow down a push. And besides, the true value of KO in this composition is his 0 point. An undeniable dagger that prevents multiple attackers from using any utility, and it affects the enemy team through walls? Even if KO can't physically stop the enemy team from pushing, denying the utility is arguably more valuable. I could do a whole video on this topic alone, but to boil it down, when an attacking team tries to push onto a site, if they're going into more than one player, they need utility so that they can effectively get several people out of the choke points on Split. Because otherwise, even if they win the aim duel versus the KO, there's still likely another defender, and that defender will have utility available, can set them up advantageously, and that defender will trade extremely well most of the time. You can see just how oppressive Verturoso's composition is, even without ultimates. Additions like the Viper's Pit, Cosmic Divide, and Lockdown just mean that there's even less options for an attacking team. Let's take a look at this round from the recent Nerd Street Gamers Monthly, where Verturoso played Ghost Gaming. Virtuoso have a vice grip on each of the major choke points. Lin has an operator watching a lobby, even if Ghost Gaming invests utility to get past it safely. There's a tricky trap set up by Iconic with the alarm bot, so he would probably trade pretty well, at least get 1 or 2 out of this. Over in mid, Eli has used the Viper's Pit, which makes mid a no-go for 90% of teams. And even the 10% of teams that would risk pushing that, they either run into Eli and probably trade poorly, or they try and sneak into Vent where there is yet another trap from Iconic waiting for them via the turret and the nanoswarms. B main isn't exactly a picnic either, because not only are there 3 Astra Stars lying in wait for Ghost Gaming, but also Apoth and Sniper are waiting to punish anyone who pushes. And like I said earlier, with the 0 point, that would likely be a push without most of Ghost Gaming's utility. There are simply no good options for an attacking team against setups like these. And this was just the setup that I noticed. Virtuoso were constantly switching up who played which choke points on what site, so you can never be sure as an attacking team exactly what you're running into, which makes adapting on any given half so very difficult. And now I hear you saying, well, Paul, if you're such an obvious fan of the Virtuoso composition, since you won't shut up about it, why even bother adding Team Liquid to this video? Well, first of all, get out of my head, you don't pay rent in here, but more importantly, it's because Team Liquid's style is the complete opposite of Virtuoso's. And it works just as well, if not even better. Whereas Virtuoso decided to use a lineup of strong defensive agents to completely deny and control the choke points, Team Liquid have instead opted into a more aggressive and aim-heavy style, centered around an obscene amount of flashes. Like look at this. Between flashes and concuss abilities, Team Liquid have 7 different options. This is the comp that fuels nightmares about my ranked games. The only difference is Team Liquid are actually smart enough and good enough shots to where they can pull this off flawlessly. Unlike Verturoso, who wanted an attacking team to look at a choke point and think to themselves, well, we just can't go through here, let's go somewhere else. Team Liquid instead want to lure the attacking team into a false sense of security. Let them push out the choke just a little bit, and then bombard them with flashes, swing out, and demolish the enemy. Or alternatively, they can even use the flashes aggressively and crush them beneath their boot, like in this round, for example. Which coincidentally also works on the attacking side. And with the exorbitant amount of flashes that Team Liquid has, they can overwhelm any area they feel like on the map with brute force and almost never take a bad gunfight. Now, naturally, since there are 2 different viable styles, at least in my mind, there are pros and cons to both. Virtuoso's style gives you a vice grip over the map defensively, but there's a lot of moving parts to it, and it doesn't have that strong of an attacking side, as Verturoso quickly figure out in this series. And while Team Liquid's composition is easier to execute, you also need to hope the enemy team doesn't have many ways to stop your momentum. And you have to be very confident in your gunplay. And not many teams are anywhere near as confident in their gunplay as Team Liquid. Both these styles seem perfectly viable, in my honest opinion. I, for one, am just glad in how specific and targeted they are. This seems like the evolution of Valorant competitive to me. I'm hoping that strats like these move us away from things like the post-plant meta, things like the double dive meta, right? Where we stop thinking of Valorant as what is the easiest composition to execute on every map and start looking at individual maps and considering how to optimize and abuse the geometry there to the largest possible extent. These compositions and strats are optimized for split and split alone, making whatever comp that comes up against them completely obsolete in comparison on split. Now we move over to different maps, obviously you would need different comps, but I, for one, hope we get to see more of these two, and I definitely can't wait to see what other unique strategies pop up all across Valorant. Thanks again, y'all, for tuning in to another Valorant analysis video. I always appreciate it. It's YouTube, you know the drill. There's a like button down there, and it just looks ever so lonely. Which style do you think would come out on top? Verturoso's defensive style or Team Liquid's aggressive one? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you hit the subscribe button for more Valorant action.